to all of you, and especially to those of you who have been asking me questions in the past few months. So I'm recently getting a lot of the same questions over and over again, and since I'm just kind of tired of answering them every time, I thought I'd do a little Q&A video where I wrote down all the most frequently asked questions in this book, and I'm going to answer them. So the first question was, are you still in Japan? And no, I'm not in Japan anymore, I'm back in Germany. I left Japan last year in September, I think. So I'm already back in Germany for quite a long time. So yes, I do start to miss Japan sometimes, which is probably why I needed to get that Japan crate. But yeah, it also just feels great to be reunited with my family and my friends, so I've got that going for me. That leads us directly to the next question, which was, do you have any plans to go back to Japan? And I actually wanted to go back to Japan this year. It kind of didn't work out because I didn't have the money, but I am planning to go back to Japan next year in spring for a language course, so for studying a little bit more Japanese. And I want to go for about 6 to 8 weeks, so of course I am going to take you with me and share my language course experience with you. So yeah, I hope I'll be able to do that in early 2017. I also have plans to go back to Japan for 6 months or so during university to spend a semester there. I'd like to study at the Sophia University in Tokyo. I still don't know if I'll be able to, but if I will go back to Japan for a longer period of time, of course I will continue to make videos. Because another question that a lot of you have been asking me lately is, what will happen to my channel now that I'm not in Japan anymore? So I have some good news for you. First, I still have some footage left that I took in Japan. Of course, it's not a whole lot, but it's something, and I think I could still make something interesting out of it, or at least I hope so. I also have a lot of stories left, so things that happened to me in Japan that maybe were a little special or awkward moments as well. So I wanted to talk about that kind of experiences as well in the form of vlogs here on YouTube. But of course, sooner or later I am going to run out of stories to tell you or out of footage to show you. So that's kind of sad because I really like doing this YouTube stuff. It's really become a great hobby of mine. So I still want to continue making videos. Maybe the topic's going to be a little different. I'm thinking about doing videos about cosplay or comic conventions because I've always been interested in cosplay, and I recently started to make one myself, my very first cosplay, and I'm super excited how it will turn out, so I'd really love to share those kind of things with you as well. So if you're interested in those kind of videos as well, please leave me a comment so I know if you like it or not. Another question that I got quite often is, what part of Japan did you stay in? So I think this was mostly connected to the high school videos because I show a lot of the scenery and the landscape of the place I lived, and I stayed in the Shizuoka prefecture on the Izu Peninsula right here. It was a really rural area, but I really liked it because it was very peaceful and nothing compared to like the super busy mega cities like Tokyo. But it also had some downsides, of course, like you couldn't really go out with friends in the evening or on the weekend because there was nothing you could do. But still, I really liked it. It was very beautiful there, and I also like that it showed me a little bit of a different side of Japan. Usually when you're a tourist, you only get to see like the super big cities and then some tourist spots, and rural Japan is something you don't usually visit as a tourist. So I also really liked that I got like another impression of Japan as well. So another question that some of you asked me was, were my host families or was my school very strict? Because that's something you hear quite often about Japan, that Japanese people are super strict. But I have to say, I was super lucky with my host family, so they were so nice and they took me everywhere in Japan, and I still write mails with them sometimes, so I don't think they were very strict. I mean, I did have to help a lot in the house, like we did the cleaning together, we did the dishes together, and I helped with the cooking sometimes, but I actually really enjoyed that because it made me feel like I was more part of the family, other than just being a guest who doesn't have to do anything. So as for school, I have to say that they were stricter in some ways than schools in Germany are, but in other ways they really weren't strict at all, and I was super surprised by that. In my school, for example, they were quite strict with like the uniform and everything, so we were not allowed to roll up our skirts at all, and they checked on that. So if they saw you running around with a skirt that was too short in their opinion, you would really get into trouble. On the other hand, if you forgot, for example, your textbook or your notebooks in your locker, they were totally okay with it. So the teachers were just like, meh, go get it. While in Germany, if you forget your things, you're pretty much fucked. But again, some of the rules didn't really apply to me as strict as they did to the Japanese students, because I am a foreigner, and a lot of people in Japan think that as a foreigner, you don't really understand what's going on, which is true sometimes. So they treat you a little bit different than everyone else. And I mean, sometimes that's nice. Sometimes you like that special treatment because you actually don't understand what's going on. But sometimes it also makes you feel like a little bit of an outsider. So my tip for you, if you are planning to go on exchange, would be try as much as possible to do the things the same way as Japanese people do. So if all your classmates are expected to take a special class, do that class. Even if you don't understand anything the teacher says in class, it will really help to feel more part of the class and for your classmates to accept you, and of course it will also improve your Japanese. So another question was, how do you get onto exchange? So how did I get into my program? So if you want to go on exchange to Japan, or just to any country, I think, you have two options. The first is that your school offers an exchange to that country. For Japan, that's quite rare. I don't really know any schools that offer exchange programs to Japan in Germany. So another option is to choose a commercial program that offers high school exchange to Japan. So mine was called Ayusa, and what you do is you basically, you first Google what kind of programs there are, and then you can kind of compare them to each other, what the costs are, and what kind of special things they offer, like an exclusive Ayusa t-shirt. And then you just apply to the program, and most of the times they will accept you, I think. The downside of this is that it is really, really expensive. So I worked full-time for half a year back in Germany in order to be able to pay for my exchange, and I still didn't manage to pay the whole price by myself. So you will need some support from your parents. So after you apply to the program, there usually is kind of a procedure, like an application procedure, and it does take quite long. So if you want to go in exchange, make sure you apply to the program at least 1 year in advance. So now, the probably most asked question ever was, did you know Japanese before you went to Japan, or do you need to know Japanese in order to go on exchange in Japan? And the answer to that is yes, you do need to know Japanese. You could probably go without knowing any Japanese at all, but I don't think it would be clever to do that at all. I personally studied Japanese for 1 year before I left, and I studied at an evening school, and the classes were kind of slow. So I did do a lot of self-studying, even though I was graduating at that time and I didn't really have much time to study Japanese at all. So I knew very, very little Japanese when I actually went to Japan. So looking back, I should have probably studied a bit more, because the first 2 weeks or so I didn't understand anything at all. And I had some really embarrassing moments with my host family, but it did get better quite fast. So I think after 2 months I was able to do all the basic conversations that you would have. I still have problems even now when a conversation goes really into detail of a specific topic, because I simply do not know the vocabulary needed for that. And that's kind of sad, but I also think it's pretty normal. So my tip for you would be learn as much Japanese as you can while you're still at home, but also don't stress yourself about it. If you just can't manage to learn as much Japanese as you probably like to, that's okay. As soon as you go to Japan and as soon as you have Japanese around you all the time, you only talk to people who know Japanese and those kind of things, your Japanese is going to improve really quickly. So I think actually that's the best method to learn Japanese, to just go there and start talking, start practicing, maybe doing some mistakes, it doesn't really matter, but just practice it. But it will still help if you know some Japanese in advance. Most exchange programs actually require you to know at least a little bit of Japanese, so as soon as you apply to the program, around 1 year in advance, they will tell you to please go and start a Japanese language course somewhere. So directly linked to that, the next question was, can you teach us Japanese? Or how did you learn Japanese? So the answer is, no, I cannot teach you Japanese. I'm not fluent in Japanese myself. I know most of you only know my Japanese from my goodbye speech, but please keep in mind that that was a speech that I prepared for around 2 weeks or something, and I had help from my host family to make this speech as good as possible. So my everyday Japanese is way worse than the Japanese I was using in my speech. So no, I am in no way qualified to teach you Japanese, I'm sorry. Now you know a little bit about how I learned Japanese, and I promise you I'm going to make another video where I go really into detail and I explain to you all the different books that I use, or apps that you can use for free, or great website that can come in handy. So if you'd like to see that, I'm sorry, you maybe will have to wait a little longer, but I'm definitely going to do it. Last but not least, a lot of you have been asking me what kind of equipment I use to record my videos and to edit them. And I was really surprised by that, because I actually just bought a pretty cheap camera off of eBay. And even though I really like the video quality myself, I was still surprised that so many people liked it so much they actually asked me about it. So I'm using the Samsung NX300 together with the kit lens. For editing I use Adobe Premiere Pro CC. So yeah, that was all of the most asked questions, and if you still have a question that I did not answer, please leave me a comment, so I hope I'll be able to answer it, or you could also write me a private message on my Instagram, which you'll find a link in the description as well. So yeah, that's it for today's video. I hope to be back soon with another Japan crate video. I'm kinda late, I know, but hey,